It's an exciting week. Yeah. Uh, right off the bat, we have Monday today. Um, you know, it, First of all, we're in the heat factor finally here in Washington, which I know the rest of the country's been definitely feeling the blaze, but we are finally in the heat. And supposed to hit, I don't know, 90 degrees or something here today. But today, Mars and Saturn, these are the two planets that are, stepping up to the plate. And there's a sextile between that Mars in Aries and that Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. And Mars in Aries, there's a dynamic push to do things. That's just that impulsive striking out and making something happen kind of energy. Saturn in Aquarius is kind of like, here's our rules and regulations that Saturn generally stands for, and possibly the levels of restriction. But in the Aquarian archetype, that restrictive nature of Saturn doesn't quite play as phenomenally, shall we say, as it does in the Capricorn perspective, but it's still Saturn. So you kind of have this idea, Mars is pushing, to do something, and it's in Aries, and there's a sextile between them, and that means that energy, they're able to talk to each other rather easily. That sextiles the fire and the air elements. The air element of where Saturn is says, let's try and put this into a level of mentality or communication, and try and temper the idea of rules by options. What might the options be for this Mars Saturn sextile that's across that Aquarius Aries thing? Is like, I get the vision when I see this is that maybe there's some regulations and rules that just aren't quite as appropriate as they could be. And Mars is, that driving kind of energy says, well, let's experiment. That's a good way to put it. Experiment with the rules, change them up a little bit, see what develops. I think that's kind of the energy for today. Another thing that happens today is that Uranus, which has been, slowly making its way through the sign of Pisces, finally stations today. It's still going direct, but so friggin' slow. It's stationing right there on the 26th degree of Pisces, which means that it's in the process of forming a sextile with Pluto. So we've got another aspect of that sextile at work. What are the opportunities that might be present here? I'm not going to play the Plutonian factor up in here. They're both retrograde, but I would like to focus in on Neptune in that 26th degree of Pisces. By reading you the Sabian symbol interpretation from Dane Ruger in his An Astrological Mandala publication. Watching the very thin moon crescent appearing at sunset, different people realize that the time has come to go ahead with their different projects. Keynote: a keen appreciation of the value of individualized responses to any challenges of life. And this is the fallacy of totalitarianism. At times, we can all act like despots, demanding that others react to any situation exactly as we do. Neptune is a level of creative imagination in the Pisces deepest sign of the zodiac. And when any planet is standing still, it's like there's an intensity, because the focalization of that energy is saying, pay attention, pay very close attention to the dynamics of what's in play here. And Neptune basically going retrograde for until mid-November of this year, is going to be backtracking back through Pisces, asking us to utilize some of that creative imagination in a way or technique that allows for the investigation of some of the more profound and deep resonant fields of what it means to be spiritual, to be an organic being that is in contact with all of life. I'm just going to let it go at that. More like that's an essay pondering to go on. And then Tuesday, guess what? It's time for the next new moon in Cancer. Let's pull up a chart, take a look, see what we have to look at here. Okay, here's our moon down here going through Gemini. It's Monday. Let's see if we can, Tuesday. Now you see in Tuesday, the moon jumped all the way over here to Cancer. It's 5 degrees away from Cancer here, first thing in the morning. 5 degrees translates to 10 hours of movement. And 10 hours of movement. What I found kind of interesting about that Neptunian Sabian symbol that I was just looking at is the fact that it talked about that waning crescent moon, which is exactly what you see up in the skies in the very early mornings these days as it's approaching its next conjunction with the sun. In other words, a new moon. But more specifically is that over the past week and a half, the moon has essentially conjuncted every single planet in the zodiac as it's moved from Capricorn down and through Taurus and Gemini, which is where it is now, and about to go into Cancer for the next new moon. I want to double check something here. Let's move it ahead some hours. Yeah, okay, it happens there at 7 degrees. I'm just playing here with some mechanics. The Sabian symbol for this new moon, and like every new moon, the idea is to set an intention that from a Cancerian perspective is, how tuned into am I to my roots, my family, my home, And this is the kind of energy that wherever Cancer is in your chart is being queried as to, what is the perspective that I want to aim for this next lunar cycle that begins here in that nurturing home front, Cancer. Just kind of glancing here at the Sabian symbol for this and seeing, a group of rabbits dressed in human clothes walk as if on parade. And a keynote, a tendency in all forms of life to imitate higher forms as a stimulus to growth. Keyword being learning processes. And, it's even as I'm reading that, I sometimes wonder if trying to portray the human penchant for its interpretation of the life process and being imitated by rabbits, which life form is most effectively tuned into the energy and vibrancy of life? In this moment, I'm inclined to say it's the bunnies, it's the rabbits hopping around. They're excited, and there's that newness of beginning that is represented by that. We're in the late stages of spring. Actually, we're in summer, but here in Washington, it feels like summer has finally arrived after a very long spring cycle. And so, there is impulsive energies that are at work right now. That's that Mars still in Aries. And when I looked at the whole entire week of what happens, you kind of see this square happening here that's, essentially it's forming. And actually, during this day, as you can see that the sun is at 6 degrees, Jupiter at 7 degrees, we got this square between Jupiter and the sun. We got a forming square happening here between Mars and Pluto retrograde. And so when I looked at the whole entire week, actually, let's just do the whole week and watch these two orange lines. Theoretically they're red, but they're orange in this program. Oh yeah, the moon. Yeah, we'll go back. See, the moon gets excited there on Thursday. But that's square energy between Jupiter and the sun and Mars and Pluto are essentially emphasized as we go through this week. And so it's a square energy, and square energies, these are elements that don't easily want to, play in the sandbox well with one another. And so, and yet these particular signs that are involved in this, they're all cardinal signs: Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer. These are cardinal signs. These are all about the impulse of initiating things, getting things moving, creating an idea that it will be stimulating enough to allow something to transpire. That's essential cardinal energy. These squares that are happening between them, if you think about it, they're focused in on the sign of Aries, which is Mars, ruler of Aries, is one of those squares. Jupiter, which is in Aries right now, is, it's Jupiter. Jupiter, aim large, think big, and so you've got this Aryan energy, this impulse to do something is being stimulated by Jupiter to don't hold back. Definitely don't hold back. Yeah, we have squares. They're focused on that Aries sign. Mars and Jupiter, they're not necessarily forming a aspect to one another, but they're both in Aries, and Mars is not holding back when it's in Aries. Jupiter doesn't know how to hold back. And so we've got this impulsive drive to essentially enlarge anything that we're thinking or touching or want to be a part of or want to stimulate into creative action. That impulse of life is percolating right now. And the two squares that are taking place, which are in place for all week long, are kind of like, well, normally I have a square. I feel a little bit like there's some edginess in the air. Let's just look at the Jupiter and Sun edginess is like Sun, the vitality of life itself is in Cancer. So the experience of tuning into what does it mean to really grasp, where is home? And I'm looking at home personally as something much more than just a place to be. It's more like a consciousness of an energy signature that really, makes one aware of whatever environment they find themselves in, if appropriately applied, can be seen as this is the energy of home. We're everything that we do here on planet Earth is that Earth is home. We're talking Jupiter here. We're not thinking small. So the Earth is the home. And so you've got, even though it's a square, it just says that, if I show the willingness to engage with this kind of energy, I'm not going to hold back on what it is that this drive of life is wanting to express. Now let's look at this Mars and Pluto, Aries to Capricorn. This, you can kind of see this is at 25 degrees where Mars is and 27 degrees where Pluto is. It's a forming square and will form throughout the week and and go on. So this energy is in play, like the Jupiter Sun aspect and the new moon and everything. There's the impulse, the drive to to stimulate creativity in ways that we may not have done before is on the table. That Mars square to Pluto square to Pluto retrograde is the impression that I get just as I listen to what it is that, what Pluto and Mars in their conversation are taking place is that, Mars is kicking the energy up. There's no doubt about that. And Pluto is in retrograde up there in the sign of Capricorn is saying, I've made attempts at allowing you opportunity to tune into factors that have been buried and tried to been sequestered away from your everyday life from the perspective of those in positions of control or leadership or government or CEOs in business and all that kind of stuff. Might it be that there are factors that are where truth is not being expressed? Are we being sold a bill of goods somewhere along the way? Yes, something I think more and more of us are becoming aware of as an increasing factor into what it is that this modern Western society that we live in is really aiming at. Doesn't seem to have a lot of, appreciation for all of us that are, essentially keeping the machine running. Where's the machine heading? Well, it seems pretty obvious. The machine is running to make money for a few people at insanely high levels, whereas the vast majority of us have less and less and less economics to play with, you know. And that doesn't really, in the long run, seem to spell out a lifestyle that is beneficial for not only just us humans, but all of life, you know. We're not really essentially being given resources to appreciate all that is around us in living, because we are under the thumb or the clock, the time clock, to accomplish things. You know, yes, we have, you know, basically got a more posh lifestyle in this country than many places on the planet, but it's unsustainable. I digress. Okay, Wednesday. To add a little extra seasoning to that matrix of the Sun square Jupiter, Venus on this day has basically moves through a sextile with Jupiter from Gemini. You know, here's a, you know, this is an energy that is doing the happy dance. Venus, what is of value? And it's in Gemini. What is of value to talk about? And being enhanced by this sextile to Jupiter in that driving Aryan cycle might inspire conversations with others that we've been holding back on. And it would be probably advisable to practice listening more specifically so that we can actually hear what it is that is on the table in that sharing mode. You know, it's a powerful kind of energy, this sextile between Venus and Jupiter. And so things are going to come up that might not have come up except for this Wednesday. Actually, because aspects last a lot longer, this is another one of those aspects that during this week is in play, like the squares between the Sun and Mars and Pluto. And yeah. July comes. Friday, new month, July. We're in Cancer. We're staying tuned, hopefully, to, you know, how tuned in are we to that resource of our understanding of resonance with the home front, with our roots. Where do our roots find a zone of resonance? This is part of the experience of Cancer. Cancer is also how do I feel about things? And it's not just the kind of feeling like I feel my cheeks, I feel my neck, I feel my hair. It's feeling is from the lunar perspective, because the moon rules Cancer, is something more dynamic, more integrated into the whole than we may generally be inclined to tune into. And when you can tune into that level of feeling, you know, there's an excitement to it right now. And I'm continuing to use the excitement because of the Aries signature that's in play this week with Mars and Jupiter. There is excitement in the air. There's this impulse, those cardinal signs are saying, hey, it's time to initiate something, you know, on multiple levels. Capricorn, we need to initiate a new version of what it means to be in a position of rulership. Aries, I just want to, I just want to start something, get the ball rolling. I don't care what direction it's going to go in. I just feel my itchy feet, and Cancer, I need to really tune into how connected everything really is, because that's the zone wherein home takes on a very different level, is when we recognize its connection to everything. I'm looking and seeing what everything. So Mercury, Mercury is moving into a trine with that Saturn retrograde up there in Aquarius. This, of course, doesn't, perfect until Saturday, but it's in play. Mercury in the sign that it rules, Gemini. What thoughts, what potential stories might be in play for ways to facilitate that shift in that Saturn and Aquarius, that shift in the rule structure with enough velocity to be able to get over any kind of speed bumps that might appear to be in the way in the adventure of newness that is in the air this week. This is something to really, take to heart. This new moon in Cancer is saying, how tuned in to you is your understanding of where your roots are. How deep do they go? Is the resource level of what it is you understand home to be for you as vibrant and alive as it could be? Because that's the kind of energy this week that is in play. It wants us to, to percolate a little bit more, not try and get us sedentary and stayed in our ways. That, there's this drive of life that, I can't hold myself back from. Show you the rest of my t-shirt. The magic school or tool bus is heading off with the rising sun to start the week. I got 2 doctor visits this week, but it's just part of the scenario that I have to live with this week. And I don't feel bad about the doctor visit. I'm actually quite excited. So what is happening is the moon, which, it did this dance across all these planets. And then as soon as we had the new moon on Tuesday, the moon is now doing its dance and trajectory out across, and it's going to make oppositions to all the other planets. It's just entering Virgo here on Sunday, getting ready for the next new week, but it's already been in opposition to Pluto and opposition to Saturn. And the next thing is will be an opposition to Neptune. And on with the dance. I'm just going to keep this one short today because it's hot and I need to go make some running around out in the heat. And I'm actually more than happy to have air conditioning in my car because I don't have it in the house. Well, I have a marginal one in the house, and having the temperature get up to 90 degrees, it gets a little sultry inside this place. So if I were to offer one word for this particular week that we're going into, it would be adventure, without a doubt. Pay attention to the nuances of the things that are transpiring around you, and how you might particularly be able to utilize that energy in a way to keep things stimulated. Don't let them die on the vine, because there's a vibrancy in motion this week that is begging us to participate. And and the newness of a new moon is saying, go out there, feel life. It's in Cancer. Feel life. Can you sense that? Anyway, have a great week. I will see you next week, and keep it adventurous. Absolutely keep it adventurous. Thank you so much. See y'all.